Hello, today's demo is going to be on installing and configuring the Qsales API so that Qsales for Act can connect from Act to QuickBooks. So let's get started. The first process is to go to the download site, which is actforwork.com. Scroll down. This is where we keep all the keystroke downloads. Scroll down to Qsales for Act and double click. And then within this, you're going to see a subdirectory 64-bit. Now, 64-bit does not mean that the new API is limited to working with 64-bit versions of ACT. It means that it supports 64-bit versions of ACT. It will actually support back to ACT version 19. Okay, so let's review the files in this location. We've got both the installing the Qsales API and plugin for version 13 manual, and we have the user manual. Then we have three installables. Now, the middle one is the plugin. We're not going to be covering that today. And the top one is the schema utility. This is kind of a rare use case where hosting providers can use it to create all the fields required to be added to your ACT database for the Qsales plugin that you can do quickly and easily without installing the software on the hosted server's location. Okay, the final file here is what we're going to be focusing on today, and this is called Qsales for Act Server Installer. And the reason why it's separate is that the three applications that it installs only need to be installed on the server where you have QuickBooks. And that particular installer does not require a license. The plugin is going to be installed where you're using Qsales and ACT together on the workstations, and each of those installations require a license, but this one here does not. So let's get started. I'll double click on this. I've already downloaded this file. So if I go here, I can see that I've got it here. And now we're just going to double click the install. And as I said, this is going to initiate the installation of three applications: the Qsales API, QSync, which we won't be covering today, and the QuickBooks SDK connector files. Now we're going to select accept. Now, custom and complete, there's only two files that it allows you to configure the installation of: the QSync application and the Qsales API. Because the QuickBooks connector files are required, it doesn't allow those to be configurable for the installation. They'll go in every single time. So we're going to click on custom just so that we can see the two options, and we're going to leave both of them installed. And now we're going to install. Now, this whole process shouldn't take much more than a minute. And it will first install the API, and then it will install QSync. That process is done now. And now it's installing the QuickBooks connector files. Now keep in mind, none of these files need to be installed again. In previous iterations of Qsales, you had to install the QuickBooks file connectors on every single workstation because the connection for Qsales was local, and it was between ACT and QuickBooks on each workstation. Now the setup is that you set up the API once, you connect it to QuickBooks, and all other Qsales plugin installations will connect to that API. Now let's finish. Okay, so we've got that done. Close our folders. And now we can either go click here and go to the Qsales API utility here, or we can scroll down to the new Qsales API group here, open it up, and select the Qsales API utility. Now at this point, you should have ACT closed and QuickBooks open, okay? Now, when you launch the API utility, the API is not installed, just the setup portion of it. So now you're faced with two options: the server or the personal installation type. The choices are pretty simple. If you have a server where you've got QuickBooks installed and that server is not used as a workstation in your production environment, then go with the server. Also, if you are using remote users that need to connect to an external API, then you'll want to go with the server. The personal is what we'll be demonstrating today. Now, the personal Qsales API was custom designed by us. It is a proprietary API. It does not require Internet Information Services, or otherwise known as IIS. So you can install this on a Windows home computer. Now, the reasons that you would pick the personal API is if the computer that you are installing the API into is a production computer. So, a computer where you have QuickBooks installed and people are actively using it and logging into QuickBooks. And that's the primary reason. So let's continue with this. We're going to install it. Is installed. Okay. Now it's going to prompt us to start it. I'm going to say no for now, and I'm going to go to the configuration tab. Now, this is where you have to have the path to the open QuickBooks file. So don't set up a path to a file that you don't have open here. It's got to be the same one, okay? So once you've selected that, and you've selected the appropriate regional version of QuickBooks, and we only support the Canadian, the US, and the UK version. Once you've done that, then you should select Request Access. Now, this is why QuickBooks has to be open, because when you click on it, it's going to prompt you that it's got to be open, and now it's going to pop up in the background the trust permission, okay, the trust request. So you're going to select the last one here. Yes, always. Allow access even if QuickBooks is not running. Now, in this case, the personal API requires it running. So you're going to click on yes, okay, and then you're going to click on continue. It's going to prompt you one more time because the API is not digitally signed. This is something that was done by design because the Canadian version of QuickBooks supported a signed API, but the US version didn't. So we had to leave the API portion unsigned. As it's not the one that's installed on all the workstations, this should not be a concern. Click on yes, and now you're done. Now, if you had multiple QuickBooks users, you would have been prompted to select which user. In this case, there's only one in our QuickBooks file, so we didn't see a drop down here. Select the user that is open, okay, that you will be sharing a login with. Okay, click on done. Okay, and now it is connected. Now, how do we test that? We go over to Edit, Preferences, and we scroll over to the Integrated Applications, and we click on Company Preferences, and this is where you can see that you've got the Qsales for ACT server API connected. Okay, and now with that, we're going to close. We cannot close the QuickBooks file once it is connected because it's got it locked. Okay, so now that I've got this in, the next thing, I've selected the version, the serial number. If you've purchased the program, you've been assigned a serial number. This is where you'll put it in. Okay, you will not need to put it in again. Okay, in this API section because this is a part of the admin. But the API password, this is what trips people up. They're looking for, well, where did I keep my API password? It's not kept anywhere. This is where you create your API password. Now, why do we need one? Well, in both instances, whether it's a server API or it's the personal API, you're going to be exposing an API internally or externally that has a direct connection to your accounting file. Anytime that you have a setup like that, it should absolutely be password protected. So this is where you're going to put it in, okay? And if you're unsure of what you left it at, you just click on here. Same thing with the serial number, you click on here and that will expose it. For this video, obviously, we're not going to do that. The last step, okay, because we did not start the API, we're going to click here and we're going to click on Run. Had you clicked on Run under this tab here, okay, then you would not run it again. You would go down to the tray here, the taskbar tray, and launch it, and then run it for there, because when you run it here, you're actually going to run a second instance. But now, since we didn't run it, we're going to click here to run it for the first time. Okay, And now we can see that we've got the Qsales API application 13.1.0.15. We've got the port, okay, that is being assigned to this. Now, if you have your Windows firewall configured on this particular computer, then you will have to create an exception for port 8008 or whatever port you assign. You can see here, okay, as you change it, it's going to change it accordingly here. Now, once you've got that set up, Carbon is the host name of the computer. Okay, so this particular API address, because it's personal, will only be recognized behind your firewall. If you have any issues with that, having other workstations be able to find it, then there's ways of modifying the host file or updating your DNS so that it knows where Carbon can be found. In most cases, most networks will easily find the host names. Okay. So now we've got HTTP. Don't worry about the HTTPS because you can't assign an SSL certificate to the local computer, and you don't need one if it's internal. And then you have 8008, and then you click on Start, and then that is it. Now what you're going to see is a little window pop up, okay, that allows you to actually run it as a local admin. Previously, this was one of our biggest call drivers where people would say, I don't know my local admin password, and it would trip it up. And our tech support people weren't able to help them because we obviously don't have visibility on people's local user setup. But this allowed us to get around it. So now the Qsales Personal API is running. And in order to minimize it, if you click on exit, you will stop it, okay, which you don't want. So you're going to click on here and minimize, and then click on save, and you're going to click on close, and with that, you're done. So thank you very much. That was a demonstration of the installation of the Qsales API, in this case, the personal API, on your computer and have it connect to QuickBooks. So now Qsales for Act can be installed separately, which will be demonstrated in a separate video. And each of those installations will connect to the API, which in turn is connected to QuickBooks. Hope this was helpful. Thank you very much.